live stream out onto the council Facebook page. So I would request all of you to be mindful of that and to facilitate that. If you have a question or a statement that you'd like to make, if you could come and use the microphone at the centre dais there, that would help. It's very difficult to pick up the sound from within the body of the hall on the live streaming. Okay, so we will kick off. We've still got a couple of people coming in the back door, and I'll ask the Mayor to extend a welcome.
Well, thank you, George. I think most of you know me. I'm Neville Shanker, the current Mayor of Narrandera Shire. It's great to see a good turnout again. A lot of work has gone into preparing these public forums, and this is the last of the ones that we've had over the last few weeks. Just before I commence, I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people, traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on here today, and extend my respect to both those past and present. So, as I say, this is the last of these forums. It's a situation where the councils have found themselves striving to be sustainable, and that's the reason for us considering this application for a rate rise. So what you say, or any of the presentations that you've made to us, will be taken on board by the council and the councillors. We're the ones that are making the decision. I notice that we have a couple of councillors here tonight, Councillor Jenny Clark and Councillor Peter Dawson. I'm not sure if anyone else is here, but I do know that Councillor Narrandera has an apology. She's currently in hospital. So I'll hand you over to the General Manager, George Coward, to do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before going on, I would just acknowledge Councillor Cameron Lander and Vicky, who are also with us this evening. And Sue is somewhere. Our Deputy Mayor, Sue Ruffles. Now, as I mentioned, it is important that you can see the screen and hear what I have to say and hear what other people are going to contribute. I've got about 23, 24 slides to get through, and at the other half a dozen meetings that we've had, that's taken about 40 minutes. It does depend a little bit on the level of questions and comments, and I'm happy to take questions as we go. I find that works best. This is an agenda for the meeting, and it worked, that's good. What I'd like to achieve tonight is so that when you leave, you have an understanding of what is being proposed in the special variation, why this is happening, what it's going to mean to you as a landowner, and hopefully all of you will have already received a letter from me giving you an indication of what it means. What are the expected outcomes, both positive and negative, and how you can gain more information and ultimately make a submission. Now, we're accepting submissions up until the end of next week, and as the Mayor indicated, those submissions will be gathered up and submitted to the council meeting in November. There's a lot of background information on the council website, and I'd encourage you all to have a look at that. Take some time, because they're comprehensive reports. There is a relatively simple fact sheet which provides an outline, but if you want to get into the depth of the analysis, you need to take the time to have a look at those reports. I know you're all here tonight because you've been invited. We've sent invitations out, both in terms of personal letters, advertisements. There's been a very extensive campaign to encourage people to involve themselves in this process. And if you're just coming in later, there's plenty of seats down the front. And that's why you're here, but I want to explain to you why I'm here and why the council is here. You'll have to forgive me if occasionally I venture into local government language. I've been in the game for a long time, so sometimes I use terminology that comes naturally to me that may not be to you. So if that happens, pull me up and ask for an explanation. So I'm going to start the proceedings by talking about the obligation that I have and the council has. This is Section 8B of the Local Government Act, and it's just a little summary of a section that's got about 16 subs in it. Essentially though, it outlines the principles that councillors and council and senior staff have to try and manage the organisation by and under. So things like sustainable spending, alignment of revenue and expenditure so that things are balanced wherever possible, so a fully funded operating position, effective financial and asset management, and I'll talk about both of those things as we move along. Adequate cash reserves and the use of borrowings. Most of these things are common sense, but they're very important. The council has to be responsible and sustainable for the investment in infrastructure. I'll go into the assets in a little detail later on, but this council owns and manages about $300 million worth of assets. Roads, buildings, parks, equipment, that sort of thing. There's an obligation here to constantly monitor operations, to improve the operating position, and a new addition that came along just a few years ago that's described as intergenerational equity. And most of you would understand that, I'm sure, but it simply means that one generation can't use up the assets and leave the next generation in a poorer position. So we need to apply that principle to the council's assets. In graphic terms, this little picture here shows the balance between the resources of the council and the services that are provided. Narrandera Council is typical. There's nothing unusual about it in terms of being a rural council. Income is generated from three principal sources: fees and charges, which in our case are less than a third, the rate income, and grants. And the principal among the grants is the Federal Financial Assistance Grant. And in this council's case, that grant exceeds the rate income. Balancing that, on the other side of the ledger, are the services that the council provides. How often, whereabouts, what quality. And that varies, of course. The council, he must, as I said before, achieve a fully funded position. So to be responsible, we can't allow the financial position of the council to deteriorate to an extent where those things are not achievable. And of course, we report, like all other councils, to the state government. We're audited by the Audit Office of New South Wales, and we have to submit our financials to the Office of Local Government. Now, here tonight to talk about rates, and I appreciate that there's quite a few farmers in the room, But this is a rate notice if you would have received one that looks like this if you live in Narrandera or in a residential allotment in and around the town. The proposal that's before you is for an increase that will affect the general rate, which is the two lines that are highlighted on the screen. It doesn't affect the water charges or the sewer charges or the waste. It's restricted to the general rate income only. Strangely enough, rate pegging only applies to that. Councils are free to increase other fees and charges as they need to and as they see fit. But with general rates, we're subject to rate pegging. So I know in the early stages of this exhibition, people started to think, oh, 41% of my total rate bill, and they were horrified by that. But in fact, I'll show you details where the increase for most of the residents in Narrandera and in the Shire is in fact less than $350. In this case, it's certainly just at about that level. And that's the two lines separated out. So having just clarified what we're talking about, I want to provide a little bit of historical context. About 1981 or 2, the New South Wales government saw fit to introduce a mechanism called rate pegging. And as I said, it applies to the general rate only. The way it works is that the state government, either via the Minister for Local Government, the Cabinet, or more recently IPAR, they establish a limit that they will allow most councils to increase their general rate by on an annual basis. Typically, that amount historically has been less than the increase in the costs that council faces. And there's no hiding that, that's not a secret. It's made public by IPAR and the government. They try to restrict councils' income, and that works fine for some councils, but it doesn't tend to work very well over the long term. If you are in a situation where your income was restricted to less than your expenditure for 1 year, either as a home business or a real business or a business like mine, the normal reaction to that is to tighten your belt and make do. You might decide to cut back a little bit of the discretionary expenditure. If that situation continued for more than 1 year, for 2 or 3 or 5 years, that situation would become really quite dire. Rate pegging has been affecting councils in New South Wales for nearly 40 years. To help address that situation, there's a mechanism called a special variation, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Before I get to that slide though, I just want to give you some examples of what tends to happen over time when that income restriction is in place. So I said the discretionary expenditure is cut back. Council maintains $300 million worth of assets, and over time those assets come to be in a different or varying conditions, and eventually they will wear out and have to be replaced. But the decisions around that are to a great degree discretionary. What's happened over time in Narrandera, the council has, by necessity, restricting investment in assets, fallen behind in where it should be in terms of renewing assets by about $16 million. Now, if you have a look in the reports, you will find where there's very detailed asset management plans that describe the condition of all of those assets in the various classes and in their various conditions. And we're behind where we need to be because of that lower level of income available for investment. While that's been happening, of course, the wise people that run local government in this state have been progressively increasing the pressure in terms of governance. They generally adopt a one-size-fits-all approach, and they don't care how councils fund their requirements. I've got plenty of examples that I could go through and give you some more detail on how that works, but I'm sure you can imagine. We have to meet these standards in terms of accounting, in terms of management of assets, in terms of risk management. We've got to have an internal audit committee, not just any old audit committee, but it's got to meet the government guidelines. So there's been plenty of pressure in that area. And that's accentuated the difference in the balance between the income and the expenditure. I think everyone in this room will remember the storm events of January of 2022. We had two really severe events that put floodwaters into houses and shops and Toloka and threatened many more. Shortly after the second event, we had a public meeting in the emergency centre, and I recall there was a pretty good roll-up, maybe 30, 35 people, and they were all singing from one hymn sheet, and that was, "Why has council allowed this to happen? Why haven't you fixed it? When will you fix it? We don't want this to occur again." So immediately following that, we did some minor adjustments to the existing stormwater scheme, and we engaged consultants to conduct a hydrology study to design a solution. They've done that, and that's been publicly exhibited here in town for everyone to have a look at. I don't recall how many submissions we've received. The cost of that new project is estimated around $16.5 million, and it involves a fairly significant structure. It captures the stormwater essentially from up beyond the bowling club, bringing it down Bolton Street, across the highway, either down the highway or down Adam Street, and to the canal, and then some fairly significant work at the canal to manage the water when it gets there. Council wants to proceed with that project. We have prepared an application that we're ready to submit to the state and federal agencies to try and get investment from them. But we believe that the council is going to be asked to contribute a fairly significant amount of the cost of that project. And one of the inputs into this variable rating application is to cover the cost of that interest payment. So,
thank you, General Manager. You mentioned that since the last overland flood event of last year, that you commissioned a report and obviously a hydrological approach to it. Have you taken on board, we since I can remember, we'll go back to 2009, we had a report done in 2009, it was submitted. We had a report done by Weil and Associates, which was completed in March in 2019. That not only covered the overland flood event, of 2012 and 2016 and 2010. But it was 192 pages of written report. I don't have to tell you that. There was also a questionnaire that was handed out and posted out to the community within the flood affected area, which went down as far as Gillenbar. Funnily enough, it excluded Nullabuma, the airport, but and apparently there were 71 responses from the community back to Lyle and Associates, and there were about 20 or 30 questions, and it was gauged. There were a lot of recommendations, so there was 192 pages of written text applying to something like 3 more pages, of which there were nearly 45 slides per page. And the recommendations that were made in that report were about 11, and they were in differing levels of priority. One of the biggest priorities is, of course, protecting our water supply by building a levee around the 2 water pumps that are located down in Brewery Flats, and that was seen as a major priority. There was, of course, asking to upgrade the stormwater system of the Shire within the township to prevent large amounts of water which are coming down from the top of the town. That's the Red Hill Industrial Estate, the Kiesling Drive development and the Dalgety Street area, also Pine Hill and Old Bogger Road. Now, I don't know whether anybody...
I wonder if I could just ask you to get to your question, please.
Well, the question is that there was a number of recommendations made in there, and there was nothing in there about digging up Bolton Street right the way through the park and trying to put a new stormwater system down Adam Street to take it to the channel. Now, that's obviously something that's new, that's happened since the end of last year. But why have you taken that recommendation on, as opposed to the fact that there were other recommendations that were not going to involve ripping up the centre of town? They were things such as flood retardation, and they were holding back. The idea was to hold back the actual flood for sufficient time for the existing system that we have, which is in excess of 150 years old, to actually cope with the rain event or the storm event. And though I'd just like to encourage the people who are here to get onto the Narrandera's website and have a look at, there's 4 different sections which are in a PDF format. They are quite tedious reading. You need 2 computers, one to look at the pictures and one to read the text. But they certainly do not, none of the recommendations involve tearing up the middle of the town and putting a stormwater system right the way through to the channel, as you are telling us now. So I'd just like to ask the community to put to the council why they are not going ahead with the recommendations that were made by Lyle and Associates, and I'm quite sure the hydrological report cost an awful lot of money because it's been done very well.
Right, thank you. I'm sure the people listening to you will take that on board. So the Narrandera Stormwater Renewal Project is quite a significant component of this proposal and something that the council wants to proceed with. The report that the gentleman is talking about deals with some of those issues, but in fact focuses on water either in the river or coming from the outskirts of Narrandera. And in those, like Red Hill and the industrial area, as you correctly point out, In the events in January, the first flood wave of water that hit the shops in East Street came from the top of the hill just here. It didn't come down from Red Hill or Pine Hill, and it didn't come from the river. And that's one of the reasons why this scheme is important. I understand if it's built, it will provide some relief further up Victoria Avenue and help allay the absolutely horrendous cost of building big retention basins in that area. I'd invite you to take the opportunity to speak with Shane Wilson, the Deputy General Manager, after the meeting if you would like a bit more clarification on that issue. One of the other things that happens when you're short of money and you're still trying to operate at the absolute best level you can is that you tend to develop what I call structural deficits. These are largely caused by depreciation and in fact by the peculiarity of local government depreciation. Historically, councils were able to depreciate their assets on an historical cost basis. And that's pretty straightforward. You buy an asset, you depreciate that asset over time. When the time comes, you either replace it, you sell it, you trade it, you do what you need to do with it. I think it was around 2011, the local government accounting standard that we have to operate on was changed in that regard so that we now have to depreciate our assets on replacement value. And we don't just have to do that, we have to have the assets revalued on a regular basis. It's got to the stage where we're almost doing it every year. We've certainly reached a stage where we can't cash fund depreciation. But depreciation in its pure sense is one of the tools that organisations use to achieve intergenerational equity. So that as an asset is consumed, funds are set aside to fund its replacement. That has not been possible for some time with Narrandera Council, and those structural deficits are obvious. In 2012, the process started, but it became really critical around 2014-15. The government started looking at individual councils and made assessments about whether those councils were fit to continue as an organisation or whether they should be amalgamated. And they called that process fit for the future. Horrible term, caused a lot of pain and anxiety through the whole of the industry, and many mistakes were made. Fortunately, when the time came to make an assessment around Narrandera Council, it was saved from amalgamation. That was achieved on the basis of a number of undertakings, including the development of an improvement plan whereby the council undertook to examine itself and take improvements that would generate more efficient activity, more productive activity, less expensive activity. And that was achieved largely through those initiatives. There's a report on the website that's headed up, improvement plan. There's 58, I think, separate actions in that plan that have already been implemented. There's a number that are underway and there's a number more that are planned. So the council is looking at trying to improve its productivity and efficiency. I was talking to a chap earlier this week about the council staff. I think the council staff is a good reflection of the Narrandera community, although I did bring some employees from the Leading Council area. but I can proudly say that I've got quite a number of extremely good staff. I've got a good body of competent people, and I've got a few that need to be managed closely and occasionally given a bit of encouragement. And the gentleman that I was talking to was able to provide me with a couple of examples of where he thought I should have done that. In putting that plan into effect, the council has managed to address a lot of that, not only the Fit for the Future stuff, but the improvement plan goes on into the future. In that process, there were a set of indicators handed to each council that had to be met, benchmarks that were established by the Minister for Local Government of the day and have been carried on ever since. And if you pick up the council's financial reports, you'll see where those indicators are calculated, they're shown in the back of the report, and they're both mathematically and graphically shown. The one about the asset renewal is in there. There is also one in there about own source revenue. One of the expectations of the state government and the federal government, who provide all the grants, right, they have simply made it plain to council that if you want to continue to receive our grants, if you want to continue to be helped along with your projects, you need to do your share of raising money locally. The indicator for that is called own source revenue. So we have to measure the money that's raised out of our Shire community each year and compare that to the total income of the council. And the benchmark that's set is 60%. We haven't been able to meet that for quite some time, and we probably won't meet it. But we are way below at the moment, in the 40s. If the 41.5% option is finally introduced, council's own source revenue will reach the high 50s at the end of the 10-year financial plan that's in the documents on the website. We won't quite achieve it, but we'll get very close. Now, in recent times, we've had a flood of grants, and in the calculations moving forward, we have included the likelihood of the receipt of ongoing operational grants. I mentioned the financial assistance grant. We get 2 really critical roads grants. One is called the block grant, which we spend on the regional road network, and one is called R2R. Yeah, sorry, that just went out of my head. The R2R is a major part of those road grants, and there's a provision in there that says if you want to continue to get the R2R, you've got to continue to spend your money on the road system. You can't cut that out. And there's a very complicated calculation, and a gentleman in Canberra who checks this very thoroughly to make sure that councils aren't short digging. So even with the provision of those operational grants, we think we're going to fall a bit short of that ratio. Anyway, that's enough of that background stuff. We're here to talk about rates, and I hope you can see the screen because these numbers are really important. In Narrandera Council, we have that current rate structure. So there's 3 different types of rates. Farmland is the cheapest of those rates at 18.19 cents. And of course, you'd all be aware that rates are calculated on land value. Under the Act, the farmland rate has got to be the lowest. And in our case, it's well and truly the lowest. But nevertheless, because of the very high land values of farming properties, the rates that are paid by the farmers yield $3.2 million of the total 5.5 million in the council. It's 58 point something %. We've got two subcategories in the residential rate, they're both about the same. 69 cents in the towns of Grong and Barellum, and 61 in residential. And we use a base here and a minimum rate calculation in Grong and Barellum. And I can say, and I'll show you in a minute, 90% of the properties in those two smaller towns are on the minimum. Not everyone in Narrandera is on the minimum. Then we have a business rate, and again there's a sub for Narrandera and businesses in other parts of the Shire. $1 for the business, $1.03, sorry, for the business community in Grong and Barellum, and $1.64 in Narrandera. And I've shown there the number of assessments in each of those categories, the relevant minimum rates and the amount that's generated. And as I said, the majority of the money that comes into the council in the form of rates comes from the farming community at 58%, the residential community contribute 33%, and businesses just 9%. Now, we're talking about general rate only, we're not talking about water, sewer and waste, and of course the residents in Narrandera do have those charges to meet. So their total rate bill is a bit higher than what I have said there. One of the very serious questions that I'm asking of you, and has been asked of me, is whether that balance is right. It's an historical circumstance, it's been in place since well before George Cowan arrived on the scene, but I would like some feedback from the community about whether you think the farming community is paying the right balance, or whether some of that should be shared amongst the residents and the business community. So, briefly, if you don't mind.
Thank you, General Manager. Now, I believe that the Department of Local Government hands out a manual, about 90 odd pages, and it has the instructions for council in regards to how to raise its revenue rates, etc. There's a section there, section 8, which is under the fact of it's the opinions of council in regards to how, under special variations, it is going to ask for the money from the community. And under the guidelines that are given in this document, it does say that if in the council's opinion, that the persons who, or the land, they don't talk about persons, they talk about land. If the land is going to benefit from the facilities, the amenities, or the needs, etc., then in council's opinion, it may raise the special variation against those rateable properties. But then it comes into the reasonable opinion of the council, and it does say that if there are properties that are not subject to the increase in facilities or the needs to that are being covered by the special variation, that they really should be considered as not being taken into account under the opinion of the council as a reasonable opinion, which basically means that if you don't get a service and you're unlikely to get a service, then you shouldn't be expected to have to, under a special variation, to have to contribute to that service. And this is excluding things like sewer, garbage, external things. This is to do with special variations. Now, you do know the section I'm talking about?
I don't know the section off by heart, but I'm getting a little bit of a feeling that you might be thinking about the stormwater, are you?
Yes, I'm thinking about the farmers actually. I'm not a farmer, but I'm thinking about the farmers. Now, you're just about to slant a little bit on this general, on the residential, to give them, let's cut you guys down the middle. What do you reckon? Do you think the farmers should be paying a bit more because you guys are only paying 33%? Do you think they should be kicking in a bit more because we're not charging them so much on their rates? You bring the farmers down to their knees, they will start doing the kind of stuff that used to happen years ago, where they bring the muck spreader in and they throw it all over the council chambers and they discuss. It used to happen in years gone by, but it's not lately. But I'm just saying, if you go and hammer the farmers, got exactly the same letter off you, and in general, none of those farmers have got any access to the facilities that is being proposed for this catchment area that is caused that we have to live in. We have to deal with this, and basically somewhere we've got to pay for it. But I think the farmers are going to come back and say, this is unfair because we are the major landmass of the area, and you're expecting us to be, you're just about to allude to, how about you guys, do you think we should go and jack the farmers up further? I don't think so.
All right, thank you. I don't know, there's a couple of questions in there. I'm certainly not going to make that suggestion. I was asking you whether you felt that that was the right balance. And I'd be inviting you to include in your submission any thoughts along those lines. Totally up to you. In terms of the Narrandera stormwater, the council had quite a considerable debate about whether or not that should be funded with its own special levy, or whether the cost should be shared amongst all of the landowners. They formed the view in the end that it was better to share it across the Shire. Now, I welcome your submissions on that as well. The reasoning behind that was that it was very difficult to tell. You can draw a line around the catchment. That's fine, they're just contour lines. And we did that. And you can tell where the water's coming from and where it's going. But what you can't do is identify easily the properties that would benefit from the new scheme. Because if you live at Pine Hill and you're a property that the water starts on, you're not going to benefit from the scheme. If you're an employee in Chazaray or the newsagent, X, the bank, Coles, and you live at Narrandera, do you benefit from the scheme? Because if it floods again, more than once, I suspect, some of those businesses won't be there. That's what they're telling us. They're really finding it very, very difficult to get insurance, and they can't survive. So the council formed the view that everyone should get in and help. And that's how most of the council assets, facilities and services are funded. We've got a magnificent water park, largely funded by the ratepayers, not by the users. Mari Bashir Park is there for everyone to use, but I'm sure the folk that live at Binya probably don't make much use of it. But everyone helps to meet those costs. You're welcome to include that issue in your submission. I've looked at the submissions that we have to date, and nobody's raised that to date. So if you feel like that, you should include it. Now, I mentioned the special variation. Now, this is slightly different to the area rate that the gentleman was talking about. This is controlled by IPART, and it is included in the legislation around rate pegging. Where councils find they're unable to secure their longer term financial position under the rate pegging increases that are allowed, they can go to their community and ultimately to IPART and seek approval for a special variation. Those special variations can be either temporary or short term, or they can be permanent. The one that's before you for consideration is permanent. This is not unusual in local government in New South Wales, and most of you would be aware of what's happened in councils very close to us in recent times. 79 of the councils in New South Wales have applied for a special variation since 2016. Now, I can't believe for a moment that all of those 79 councils have been put in that position because of poor financial management or embezzlement. They're there because the level of service they're trying to provide for their community eventually becomes unaffordable under the rate pegging legislation. So this provision is there to allow those councils to say to their community, hey, if you want us to continue providing these services, looking after our assets, promoting a high quality standard of living, we need more money. We need to change the balance. Mr. Davies.
Thank you. I don't want this to be a history lesson.
Well, please, you don't have time to give me a history lesson. There's a lot of people here and they all have a go.
Okay, George, you and I met in the first couple of weeks when you first came to town. And I was speaking on behalf of the community, which was known as Renew Narrandera. I met with you and I passed my greetings on to Shirley. And I asked you one simple question at the time, and that is, what is your job description in the town? And you said, without hesitation, my job is to protect the councillors and my staff. And I said, is there anything more than that? And you said, no. Now, let's get away from that for a moment and move on to this SV. Now, SV is simply an instrument which is created by the Office of Local Government, a little bit like the way a bank can raise or lower its interest rates. Right? It's just simply a means of gathering more funds for the council. Now, that's well and good. You, a couple of times tonight, I've heard you refer to the council as... I'm sorry. I've heard you refer to the council as your business. Now, I've been in business, and I'm sure a lot of the people in this town also have been in business. Now, when a business strikes difficulty, financial or otherwise, there's a number of ways of looking at it. You tighten your belt, you look at where you've wasted money, you look at the errors that you've made, and then you work towards amending those errors. I can see a lot of errors in this town in the 12 years since I've returned here. I've seen $500,000 wasted on our truck wash. $500,000 over budget on a truck wash? Come on, you guys. Let's look at business management here. Let's look at sound business principles. This instrument that you're trying to sell to the people of this community, I believe is deficient, and I believe that there's a much more viable solution to the problem, and that is good management. And if council can't provide it, I would suggest that there are other bodies out there that can. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I welcome your suggestion. Okay, moving on. The proposed permanent special variation options that have been included in this public consultation process, there's three. So the base case, I'd encourage you all to take the time to have a look at the long-term financial plan document that's on the website, because it has embedded in it the long-term financial plans for each of these options. So you can easily tell what those projections look like. The base case is what we expect rate pegging to look like over the next 2 years. We don't know for sure. IPART have told us that we're able to use these numbers. So if nothing else changes, the rate pegging limit for 24-25 will be an increase of 3.5%. In 25-26 it'll be a further 2.5. The sustainability scenarios that are presented is either an increase of 41.5% over 1 year, or a similar increase spread over 2 years. So in the first year there'd be 25.5% increase, and in the second year 18. The numbers don't add across, so don't attempt to do that, because they're percentages on percentages. What's it for? If it finally comes into place, the 41.5% variation would generate an additional $2.3 million. And these are the things that are the target of the application at the moment. So we want to maintain existing service levels and fund depreciation. Now, I stress that there is no provision in any of the financial plans for increased services. We're only looking at maintaining our current service levels, partially funding depreciation. The upgrade of the stormwater system, as I mentioned, and we could start to address that $16 million backlog in assets. Now, if you just think about it for a while, they'll come to your mind. Some roads that are in need of upgrade, buildings, facilities around. We've done a lot of work at the pool, but there's still areas down there that need more work. They're quite significant. I mentioned the compliance requirements. There's a technology upgrade that's needed as well. Very clever people 20 years ago purchased a computer system known as Practical. I won't say that it was industry's leading software at the time, but it was pretty popular amongst rural councils. There's a very small number of councils that still use it, and Narrandera is one of those, but its days are up. The computer company that service it, look after it, have indicated not to rely on it anymore. We've gone out to tender, we've looked at the alternatives, and the council has accepted a tender for a new system. Quite a reasonable price and a good quality system that will meet our needs and the needs of the community and the government moving forward. Part of the money, $800,000, has been earmarked to help make the council competitive in the labour market. That basically means salary increases for some of the staff. I was asked last week what the turnover rate in the staff component of the council is. Up until last year, it was quite modest, quite reasonable, 10 or 11%. We had a jump in 22-23 to 16%. Now, quite a number of those were retirements and expected, but we had 11 staff leave, and the only reason they gave us for leaving was they could get better money somewhere else. And I know that a couple of them got nearly $50,000 better money somewhere else. So we've got to try and attract quality employees and keep them. So some of this money is important to achieve that, because we need engineers that can engineer. I need planners, I need IT specialists, I need accountants, we need people that know how to market the Shire, and so it's an important component. More importantly, we want to be able to match infrastructure grants as they come along, like the stormwater grant. We need to find our bit. We put applications in to fund the upgrade or expansion of the industrial estate. Now, at the end of the day, that's a build, sell, recover your money scenario, but you've got to have the money to build it. And if you don't do a very good job of building it, you finish up with a white elephant like we've had at Red Hill for the last 15 years. And it's taken a long time to get to the point where we are now, where it's completely sold. We need to build the next section so that we can continue to attract industry. We've got two very significant industries coming into that estate. One of those has been working on their construction for quite some time. I think they got a surprise when they started digging, but nevertheless, that's now been overcome and they're continuing. They could bring 30 or 40 or 50 employees into this town. A massive injection into the housing industry, into small business. It's really important. We're having meetings at the moment with a second developer who's in the housing game. They build transportable homes. They want to come to Narrandera, not just because we're on the Newell, but because they can sell their product here locally. So we want to be in a position to attract other industries that might help with those and be associated with those. The upgrade of the industrial estate is about a $5 million job. We applied for grants, they've been knocked back, but the indication is that we will need at least 25% or 20% as our share of that project, so it could be $1 million. So,
I'm Graham Buchanan, I live in 5 Balgate Street, Narrandera. I'm Graham Buchanan, I live in 5 Balgate Street, Narrandera. I've been a resident of this town for 36 or 7 years, and in that time, I've only seen one new business come to this town, and that's BioBag. And people might be able to correct me. There's been businesses changed hands and changed positions. So the only business that's come to, new business that's come to this town is BioBag.
well, I'm hoping that there'll be 2 new ones
I
very
hope it's
soon.
better for you people.
Yeah. Well, it should be better for everyone. Opportunities for employment. Both of these companies require trades level employees. Thanks, Jess. So we're talking about capitalising on opportunities like the industrial lands, but also like the Pilot Training Academy. We're doing our absolute best to build and maintain a relationship with Rex, not just because we desperately need to keep that airline flying into Narrandera, but we want them to invest in this academy as well, because that could be another 20 or 30 jobs, 80 or 90 students. Imagine the injection of income that would bring. I want to provide some comparisons, and again, it's important that you be able to read the numbers, and I hope you can. I've had to use the 21-22 figures, and those of you who have pointed out to me that I've been a bit sneaky doing that, I should be using the current rating figures. I can provide them for Narrandera, but I've got no chance of providing them from the other councils. So we've gone back to the published financial data, 21-22, for each of the categories that I mentioned before. So for, and this is Narrandera Shire, not just Narrandera Town, in the residential category, at the moment, the average residential rate across the Shire is $699. All the councils in New South Wales are, for statistical purposes, grouped into groups with other like councils. Narrandera is in what's known as Group 10, and these are not neighbouring councils, they're other councils that exhibit similar characteristics across the state. The average of those Group 10 councils for residential rates is $848. That's $149 more. I've included Leeton and Griffith here for comparative purposes only, but that'll give you an indication. Leeton Council's residential rates are $1,112 and Griffith Council's were $1,078. And I think you've probably all heard the news as to what's happened with the SV in Griffith. In the business category in Narrandera, it's $1,233. The Group 10 average is $1,676. That's pretty significantly more. In Leeton, it's lower. In Griffith, it's much more. And that's a characteristic of regional centres. They do seem to tax their businesses pretty savagely. Farmland, not quite so. Farmland, and this gets back to the percentage I was talking about earlier, Narrandera $3,669. The average across the group, $3,106. In Leeton it's more, and in Griffith it's more. If the SD ultimately comes in, and this is option one, I've provided the likely outcome there for you for comparison. So, in 25-26, Narrandera residential rate would be $1,078, and that's higher than the average, $78 higher. You're still lower than Leeton, lower than Griffith. In the business area, it would be $1,835. Again, that's lower than the Group 10 average. Higher than Leeton. Leeton rates for businesses are very low. But it's almost half the rate in Griffith. Once again, in the farmland area, the average would go up to $5,739, and that is more than the Group 10 average. It is more than Leeton and Griffith. Option two, the numbers are very similar. It's just introduced over 2 years instead of one. Each of our rate categories has a minimum, except for Narrandera residential, which has a base rate, and slightly different calculations. But essentially a minimum is the floor that everyone in that category pays. So residential ordinary for a 1 year SV goes from 510 to 720. So that's most of the residents in Grong and Barellum, they will be looking at a $210 rate increase. Similarly, for business, it goes from 510 to 720, and for farms, and we don't have many farms on the minimum, but we do have some, 510 to 720, again, is the number. And I'll just show you these numbers graphically, and I hope you can read them. If you can't read the number, the dark blue, this is Narrandera residential increase. So the dark blue area represents 1,476 properties, residential properties in Narrandera, where the increase is less than $325. the grey, there's 384 properties where the increase would be between 500 and 350. And there's a small number of higher valued residential properties, and a couple of those are on the edge of town, particularly quite large residential blocks, highly valued, and the increases there could be well over $1,000. There's a similar pattern for the residential other areas, Grongrong and Barrel. And again, the blue, there's 382 of those properties that are on the minimum and are looking at an increase of $210. We've got a further 23, and 7 of the higher valued properties, again on the outskirts of those towns. Essentially, they're large residential blocks that they really are just farmland that's too small to farm, or people haven't elected to farm. Narrandera businesses, again, the blue, there's 76, where the increase is less than $300. In the orange, there's 70, where it's between 300 and 500, and there's 72 between 5 and 1,000. And once again, there's a small number of highly valued properties, including 7, where the increase would be over $2,000. The farmland, the picture's not quite so pretty. We've got 163 farms where the increase will be less than 500. Now that's 163 out of, I think, 819 or thereabouts. And some of those are actually pensioners. There's 170 where the increase would be between 500 and 1,000. There's 270 where the increase is between 1 and 2,000. And there's 185 where the increase could be as high as $5,000. And a small number where the increase could be over $10,000. Now, that's not taking into account farmers who own more than one farm. I haven't aggregated those numbers, they're just single properties. So up until now, I've just been talking about the services and the assets and the rates. But I also want to talk about the other things that people talk to me about all the time, and they talk to councillors about all the time. And they are issues where there's an expectation on the council. Mr. Hall.
Thanks very much, General Manager. I'm not going to rule you as much as the last meeting, even though we got some unsatisfactory answers. I'm chairperson of the Narrandera Concerned Ratepayers Association, and we had a meeting last night, and we're very concerned. You're wanting community feedback all the time regarding the SRVs. We're very concerned with the survey monkey that you've got out, that the very first question gives the community that want to participate in the feedback either option 1 or option 2. Where is option 3, where the community can elect to have no increase in the SRV? Yes. Can we have that change, please?
I'll take that on board, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
What we would really expect is that folk will take the opportunity to make a submission, and that's easily and readily available on the same website as the survey. And there's a free form area there where you can type in your comments, your opinions, your views, and any suggestion you might have about a possible option. Yeah, you're getting close to your limit.
You don't know me as well as everybody else does. Now, in that regard, once we all submit to all our comments and our suggestions, because as saying no is not a suggestion. I would like to ask on behalf of everybody who's going to submit that stuff to council, I would ask you if you would please undertake to put a press release in the Argus after you have collated all those suggestions, itemise the suggestions that have been given, that are different from one another, and put alongside the quantity of people who have committed to those suggestions. Would you be able to do that, please?
Well, I'll probably do better.
This is good.
Well, it might be. And I've got a slide a little bit further on that talks about the process, but we might as well deal with it now. Following the closure of the submission period, which I think is next Friday, or thereabouts, and I won't stand on that deadline. If someone's running up and knocking on the door on Monday, that'll be fine, given our mail system. But at a point in time, early in November, all of those submissions will be gathered together with the purpose of analysing them. I've already started writing a report. All of the issues that are being raised in the submission will be included in my report to council, along with a response to each of those issues. And as an attachment, all of the submissions will be attached. So you will be able to find your submission by name. We are redacting the personal information other than your name, but if you make a submission, it will go into that report. We're required by IPART to prepare a comprehensive outcomes report on the community consultation process, and those submissions are an important part of that. And that report, including the submissions, will all go to IPART, and you'll be able to find them eventually on the IPART website. So I hope that satisfies your requirement. I was talking about other. I'm going to get another suggestion. Is that right?
No, just a clarification as to, did you actually prepare all that report yourself, or did you pay a consultant to do it? And if you did, how much was it?
Which report are you talking about?
The one that you have submitted so far with all the proposals to councils suggesting of the rate variation?
All right. It's been a combination of consultant and staff. Now, we engaged a consultant to do certain elements of it, particularly those elements that we really couldn't do ourselves in-house. So if you look on the website, you'll see a core document called the Asset Management Plans, and they are prepared by the consultants working with my engineers and my finance staff.
At what cost to the vendor?
I think I answered this question once before, and it was around $120,000 to date. Now, the consultant is not preparing the community consultation report, and he's not here at the moment, but he will be working with the council. If the council decide to go ahead and prepare an application to IPART, he will be working with the staff to prepare and launch that application.
Thank you. And at what cost would that be?
Look, off the top of my head, I don't know, but most of the components in his work have been around the 15,000 mark. So I'd anticipate it to be something like that, but don't quote me.
Exactly. So all in all, with council's time, councillors' time, consultants' time, it's a $200,000 exercise.
I'd say it is, and I had a Zoom meeting. Not a Zoom meeting, a Teams meeting yesterday with IPART, and I suggested to them that the process they rely on is very smelly. It's very painful, it's very stressful, and it's very expensive. They're reviewing their methodology, but I don't hold out great hope that they're going to come up with anything better. Back to future challenges and opportunities. Whenever someone comes to see me or the Mayor it is normally to ask about what council's involvement is in particular issues around lifestyle. You're right, come to the microphone, you're welcome.
My name's Jen Brewing, and I live out on the Narrandera.
Jan, just drop your microphone down so you, there we go.
Thank you. Well, I've just got a couple of general questions that I want to know. It seems that the biggest problems at the moment are stormwater staff, computer systems and assets renewal, which are really things that should be saved for because there's always something else coming up. The stormwater in particular, I mean, given the fact that you've had a review of that 3 times since 2009, did you actually save any money in an account for that? You know, like, was it an ongoing saving? Do you know how much you got saved for it? Or?
In terms of the stormwater, there is a mechanism in the local government legislation that allows councils to collect the stormwater levy off all the residential properties in the Shire, and we do that.
So where's that gone to then?
Unfortunately, the state government have seen fit to put a ceiling on that at something like $25 a property.
Yep.
And we've made submissions to them, as I'm sure every council in New South Wales has, to have that amount increased unsuccessfully. Now, we've got some of that money in reserve, but most of it has been used up in funding our share of some of the work that's been done to date, particularly, as the gentleman mentioned earlier, the flood studies that have been done for both Narrandera and Barellan.
And what's the point of doing a flood study when you're actually supposed to be concentrating on stormwater, not flooding at the moment? Obviously, both things happen in Narrandera, but it's the business section that you're worried about, so why would you not have money put away for that and be concentrating on that for a start?
Well, we have had some money put away and we've already spent a fair bit. You might have noticed around the central business area where we've put new inlets into the existing stormwater system. That sort of work has been undertaken as part of this improvement. Now, please, I hope no one here gets the impression from the earlier conversation that the council has lost sight of any of the flood mitigation work that's been done outside of the stormwater. There are some very important components of that work, including house raising or voluntary house purchases, and those types of things that are ongoing.
And also, I'd like to know things like the Skywalk and Visitors Centre upgrade or new one, whatever. I presume they were from a grant. A grant was issued, and if so, how much money did you have to put in for those 2 things?
Each of those things and several other projects, so there were 5 significant pieces of infrastructure involved.
Right.
The pool is the biggest one, the destination and discovery hub, the walkway over the canal, the skywalk, and the significant upgrade in the caravan park. All of those projects were bundled up in one grant, which we managed to achieve under the drought assistance program from the previous drought. The grant was $8 million, and the total project cost was around $11 million. So the council put in 3, and the government put in 8.
Okay. So do you not think, like, how long really have you known that your finances are being slowly going down the tube, let's say, you know, like to a level where it's not sustainable? Is it over years, or is it over 2 or 3 years? Is it over 10 years? Roughly, you have an idea because you have a person that looks after the finances?
Yes, I do. We all look after the finances, not just one person.
Yep. So why is it how long has this been going? How long do you know?
As I indicated earlier on, rate pegging it's a creeping virus. It doesn't hit you like pneumonia. So the situation has gradually deteriorated over time. Now, during the last several years, there's been a number of factors that have helped the council, and if they didn't occur, we would have had this conversation 4 years ago. Council has been able to sell assets that have realised significant income. So the office block in Twyman Street is a good example of that. We have a water licence that allows us to take water out of the Murrumbidgee River, which we do not use. And we have been given approval 3 years ago now to temporary transfer sale of that licence.
And that's ongoing.
That we hope, well, it could be ongoing. And I've got a slide on the water thing a little bit later on, but that sort of injection of funds has really,
Kept you afloat.
it has, and it's staved off this point in time.
So, you know that you're going to get money in from the water transfer, because if you own the licence, well, that's automatic, you can sell it if you want to sell it.
Yes, and to be quite frank, that 2,000 megs is worth a different amount every day. And sometimes it's worth over $1 million, and sometimes it's worth 200,000. Depends on the season. At the moment, I'd be flat out giving it away.
Okay, so with the grants that you got, you know, I know it's nice to have nice things in the town and we all enjoy them, but when you get to the stage that you know you're in now and you've known for a little while, was it really unwise to be just more or less throwing $3 million away on two things that are unnecessary in the town, in my opinion, only my opinion?
And you're fully entitled to that.
Like, when you're, the computer system radio will maybe need that upgraded. The assets is something that happens every year, and you know roughly how much it's going to cost, you know, to replace. And I know you contract a lot of work out, which is very expensive, and, you know, whether it be physical work or, you know, guys giving you a bit of a report on something, well, that's money that's trickling out all the time, and that's a large amount of money. And I think it's a bit rude, really, when all of us are struggling too, and you tell us that you want to give staff pay rises. I just can't stomach that one, I'm sorry. But we're not seeing the return from, you know, generally you do a good job, but I don't know how you can stand there and say, wages need to be increased when this is the stage you're at, and a 50% more or less rate increase, and just say, well, here you are, you're paying it over 2 years or 1 year, and it's just going to be forevermore. Can you not organise yourselves to have a temporary year or two increase, which definitely goes down at the end of that time, and then just take your increments as you're given each year, 3%, 4%, whatever it is. You know, I mean, 79% of councils have asked for, you know, this SV or whatever, but then out of the 124, well, the others have managed without it. So how did they manage without it? You know?
Well, a lot of the councils that have significant growth haven't faced this situation. Many of the councils that have, although it's not common either now, looking at a town like Griffith, but the city councils don't generally do this either. There's a small number of them that have, but typically they're not as involved as the rural councils. I've got a slide a little bit later on which will show exactly what will happen if no increase occurs.
I'm not saying we don't need an increase, because obviously if things are that bad that you can't, you know, organise what you need to, something's got to be done. But what I'm saying is, I think it's not fair just to say to people, you don't have a choice, you pay 1 year, you pay 2 years, and when you finish paying it, you can pay it forever more. And that's a hell of an increase, 50% increase in rates. That's just top, I reckon. You know, like, I think you should have to specify why you want that much, why you spent all this, you know, it's like 3 million or whatever that you had to pay back to the grants. Why take grants when you're in trouble, and then expect the ratepayers to pay for it when it's things that aren't, you know, they're not necessary. They're nice, but they're not necessary. It's like at home. You don't go and buy chocolates or go out to the restaurant. If you can't afford it, you eat at home. You know, it's the same thing. You know, you've got to watch your pennies.
Yeah, okay, look, I welcome your submission. Please take the time to put that in writing and send it in. Now,
George, if the rate goes through.
would you be kind enough to use the microphone because it won't go on to the live streaming if you don't?
Right, if it goes through, will we get value for money? That's the question that's got to be answered, because it's all right to use those figures to say this is going to happen, that's going to happen, but we've got to ask ourselves and ask you, do we get value for money? If we don't get value for money, this is just a talk fest.
Thank you, Graham. I want to just touch on one of the issues that Mrs. Brewer raised there, and that is the playground on the Murrumbidgee. Narrandera is a typical rural council. The economy here is based on farming and the manufacture and treatment, processing of farming produce, and all of the things that go around it with that. Second on the list is the government, and the government injects a lot of money into this community, either by employing professionals in education and health and police and those sorts of areas, or by providing social support. So what happened to Narrandera during the big drought early in the century? And what happened to Narrandera and towns like Leeton during the last drought? When the dollars stop flowing on the farms, they don't flow into the shops, and everyone feels it, suffers. One of the small mechanisms that is available to any community is to try and generate income through tourism. That is outside money, it's new money, it's coming into the community. Narrandera is absolutely ideally located on the Newell Highway, on the Sturb Highway, on Irrigation Way, to capitalise on tourism. At the moment, I think tourism generates about $17 million in the local economy a year and employs about 90 people, directly, more indirectly. We want that to grow. Now, if we can build a facility that attracts tourists but improves the lifestyle and quality of the locals at the same time, that's not wasting money. That's something very important. So that's the motive behind the playground on the Murrumbidgee.
Hello. My name is the General Manager, it's Catherine Robinson. Hi everybody. I just have a couple of, I guess they're statements, or maybe it's going to lead to a question, I'm not quite sure. Perhaps haven't formed it correctly just yet. I'd like to take up on the point about the grants, and I really appreciate that you've brought that up because it's made me need to get up and say something as well. A philosophy, something is only cheap if you can afford it. So if you go to a sale down the street and you buy something because it's cheap and you haven't got the funds to be able to pay for it, then it is not cheap. Okay? So in taking grants that cost you or us or anybody, when you actually can't fund it because you are not in a financially stable position, to me that's got big red flags. Because if you cannot sustainably pay for something that you have purchased, we've made a bad purchase. So that's the first thing I'm sort of going to say. Does that resonate with anybody? A sale is cheap if you can afford it. If you can't afford the item, it's not cheap. It's a bad. And another thing that I'll say from a very wise man that taught me a lot that I know and I believe, you cannot make money any faster than by not spending it. Yeah, that's my dad. If you spend your money willy-nilly, you'll have nothing. You have got to be very careful about what you spend. Now, these are my opinions, and I really hope that I'm resonating with some people. I have another thing that's been really bothering me since I've been to these community consultation meetings. I've been to them all, and I've listened and I've learned. I do that. I learn from what people say. I respect your expertise. I respect people's expertise who hold positions of authority within our community. I respect that. And you deserve to be respected for a position that you hold. However, $2.3 million is going to be the additional revenue that Narrandera Council is going to receive with this proposed special variation being accepted, approved and put into place. I think I heard you say earlier on in tonight's address, which I didn't hear at other previous meetings, I may have missed it, but I think you said something about a 60% percentage that Narrandera needed to have.
Yes.
Yes, I think you said something about 60%. And then I listened further and you said that even with this 10-year financial plan that the council has put into place for the next 10 years, that at the end of that 10 years, you're still not going to achieve that 60%. Am I correct in that? Am I correct?
That's what I said.
Right, so I'm going to go further. So I have to, because you're the guy that's answering our questions, because you're our general manager.
You're right.
And I know that this is hard to get your head around for a lot of us general normal people out here who aren't local government accountants. I don't want to be. That's why you're in the job. Okay? I'm not, and I don't want to learn the lingo. I just want it. I want basic common sense. And here's the question. The $2.3 million that's going to be generated is not going to see us reach the 60% target that you've identified as being something we need to reach. Currently, the information you're giving us is that our council is no longer financially viable ongoing. Is that correct?
At current income levels.
That's what I said. Currently,
and
I said that.
Yeah.
I said
I
current, so you're saying that's what you've told us. Okay, so we're going to get $2.3 million in rises for you guys to distribute and work with if this special variation goes ahead, yeah?
Yes.
Right, so at the end of 10 years, we're still not going to reach the 60%.
Not quite.
Right, so we're going to be about in the high 50s.
Yeah.
You've said several times that this special variation has got nothing to do with the general service charges being applied to properties in our community. We're talking about sewer, we're talking about waste removal, and we're talking about that other thing, whatever it is, those things. And you've said several times, even tonight, that the council can raise those charges whenever it sees fit.
As needed, yes. I think
Whenever
I
it
said.
sees fit, I think were your words.
Yeah.
Okay, so my concern is that I'm not confident that for the next 10 years, given the previous 10 years that we've had with Narrandera Council, that you're going to be in a position to come anywhere near that 60%. And I fear that there may not be another special variation increase, because that'd be real rude, but I fear that there could be significant rises to generate further income for the council by increasing our property service charges, being those three major areas. So here's my final question.
Yep.
Has there been any talk or consideration within the council financial figures, documents, papers? Are we going to see further increases in those service charges? Is that being considered? Do you see that as being necessary? Or are you confident that this 40% is going to put us in a financially viable, ongoing position?
Well, that's a bit complicated, but I can simply say to you that the 41% increase, if it went through, in the general fund rates, would put the council into a long-term financially sustainable position. The sewage charges, the water charges, the garbage charges are separate, and I am very confident that all three of those are going to increase in the future.
Are you able to tell us when?
41%.
When will they be? I'm afraid,
I can go through each one for you.
well,
Yeah.
not just for me, but I'm afraid that given the position that we've found ourselves in since 2017, which is only not very many years, or 19 or whatever the years are, say the last 10 years, I fear that without some significant changes, we're going to end up there again, not very far away.
Okay. If you just allow me to explain. Almost everybody in Narrandera, I won't say everybody because there are a few exceptions, but almost everybody in Narrandera wants a water filtration plant. Is that true? Is there anyone here that's against that?
You can afford it.
So there are three.
What water? Should have been done 20 years ago.
I agree.
Why?
Perhaps we could ask some of the councillors that were in place at the time.
Where's the 40 million grant on that was approved several months ago? That's been rumoured around town, council.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that's just a rumour. Now, if you just wait a moment.
Can I just clarify though, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the water filtration plant to get us
I
clean
thought you were
drinking.
talking about charges.
Can you, at the last meeting I was at, it was very clear that the 41% increase had nothing to do with water filtration. I'm talking about our sewage, our domestic pick-up rubbish, and that there's a stormwater charge of $25 or something like that.
Oh, I thought you were including the water.
Yeah, that's okay. Yes, okay, yes, I'm hearing you. What I'm concerned about is the management of the 2.3 million, as I've been told.
All right.
Yes, we're going to get rises, because I know you said you can't turn on your lawn because all this sort of stuff. And you did allude before, when you said about the water filtration plant, that the cost would be astronomical. You said they'd be extraordinary.
And I'll just go through those very quickly because I've made the statement that I'm confident they'll go up, and I can assure you that's what's going to happen. The water filtration plant is in the advanced stages of preparation, study, call it whatever you like. I think within a month we're going to have an opportunity for people to test, sample the water and give some indication about what they would like to see. I anticipate that sometime next year the council will be in a position to lodge a grant application. We have not done so to date. There is no grant at the moment. There's an estimate that the filtration plant will cost something like $26 million, and if it fits into the safe and secure water supply once a week. In terms of the sewerage, we are in the middle of, not even quite in the middle, but we've started the construction of the Barellan sewerage scheme. It's being funded.
I'll just interrupt a moment. I've just been told that the feed has died in the Facebook.
Yeah, I'm just trying to fix that now.
Thank you. We're working on the sewage scheme at Barellan, but behind that is, guess what? Sewerage for West Narrandera. Unbelievable that a third of the town is not sewered in 2023. So we're doing the planning around that at the moment. Now, whether that can be afforded without an increase in sewer charges, I'd be surprised. I think it's likely that the sewer charge will go up. In 2027, correct me if I'm wrong, Shane, but the state government's already legislated, you will have a green waste service. That won't happen without an increase in charges. We're looking at it at the moment, pre-planning, but it's still 3.5 years old. But it's coming. So all of those things are going to increase. Now, I hope and believe, and I made the statement in an earlier meeting, maybe at many, the financial scenario created by this increase will meet the obligations that I've listed on the slide and showed you. But councils get re-elected every 4 years, and there's an election next September. And it's entirely a matter for councillors and councils to make decisions about how they invest and what their priorities might be as they get that feedback from the community. So whether there'll be any further future changes, I cannot say. All I can do as the GM at the moment is make sure that the council's still got its doors open in 3, 4, 5 years' time, and still capable of doing these things that are on the slide. Because a lot of people think they're just as important as potholes and mowing parks. And I've talked about a few of them. So,
George, to interrupt again, are you confident that there hasn't been a systemic failure of management of funds over, how long have you been general manager for? Is it
6 years.
6 years? Are you confident that you've looked inwardly at previous records, financial reports, previous councillors' decisions and so forth, that they've done everything within their power to stop us reaching the position we're at now? I think one of the main things that is getting to me, apart from the fact you want to give you guys $800,000 worth of wages in a council forces vaccinations we can work with, which is ludicrous, but anyway, another point. To gain people's confidence now, saying, okay, we want to take up to $5,000 extra a year from you to pay to keep us financially going. Good, great idea, okay, good. But how can we trust that? As you've brought up, which I was going to bring up, these councillors changed in September. Some will retire, some maybe 1 or 2 will stay, but the rest will go. I'm not sure how long your contract is for or what your longer term is. My point is, when we stand here in 18 months, 2 years' time, we're going to be looking at different councillors, maybe even a different GM, who said, well, they might have said that a few years ago. Things have changed. Yeah. We appreciate now we've got 2.3 extra million, but hang on, we've got another tourism idea for you. I've been listening to tourism ideas here for 30 years that we've been here. It hasn't really increased or done anything. I mean, yeah, the rusty yellow peril out there is just a brain explosion as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, things like whitewater rapids, how many economic development officers have we had? Come and go, come and go, come and go. Nothing's changed. I see what you're doing. I appreciate you trying to make an effort. But how can you expect us to trust what you're going to do with this money and be financially responsible and stop making stupid decisions and wasting money on things that just, as Jen said, aren't required?
All right. That's good food for thought and for your submission to the council. Indeed. In addition to all the things I've talked about, there's another list, a list of wishes, things that would be nice, that council is asked about. It's the community that comes to the council and says, hey, how about doing this? We need an independent living centre. Or we need a youth centre. We need better promotion of the koalas. We all know that the lake needs deepening. It's a $2 million job. They're not included in any of this financial analysis. The Barellan flood levy, $5 million job. That community was evacuated in, I think, 2012. A relatively low level, not a structure, would protect them. They all cost money. Some of you have rightly raised the issue of affordability. Part of the IPART process is the requirement that council analyse the capacity of its community to meet the increase. We engaged the consultants to do it because I do not have the expertise in the building to do it, and I wanted an independent view. The report's on the website. I'd encourage you to read it. It's actually an attachment to the back of the long-term financial plan. The numbers that they've used in that document are straight out of the last 2 census. So they're your figures, they're not mine. How many more do you think?
I'm just getting to the bottom of it. Now, you said that you don't have the expertise to draw this report up.
No.
That there's nobody on your staff who's got the expertise to draw this report up. How many of your staff actually understand that report? 49 pages. And wow, it's a doozy. I do not think that the average person in this room, and I'm not an average person, I do not think the average person, I'm below average, they told me that, some standard for a long time. But I guarantee that anybody, you pull that up on the web and you've got to get a magnifying glass to look at, and once you start looking for it, they keep repeating themselves. It's not well explained as to what the process of all this, it just duplicated. And what it is you start off with, this is what you get if you put 3.5 on it. This is what you get if you put 3.5 and 2. This is what you get if you do it the first year and year 4 for 4%. This is what you get. You've got pages and pages and you can just sweep for God's sake. So the question was, how many people on your staff actually looked at that and go, wow, boss, I understand that.
Enough. I didn't ask the outdoor staff to analyse it, but I told them about it, and I think we're talking about a slightly different report. But anyway, the long-term financial plan has got, yes, it's got spreadsheets in it because that's what financial plans look like, and that's what spreadsheets look like. But if you keep going down, there's an appendix that goes into analysing the population of Narrandera Shire, what their financial capacity is and whether they can pay or not. And the answer to those questions is that some can. Some can easily, and some are going to have trouble. And that's what you'd expect. And that's very easily understood. Fortunately, as I've shown in the graphs, there's a large number of people that are looking at a small increase. We've got 539 pensioners, sorry, that's the wrong word. We've got 539 properties that are owned by pensioners in the Shire. There's 80 of those properties that are looking at an increase in the rates of more than $350. All the rest are below that figure. Some of those ones that are higher than $350 are farms. One of them's rated as a business property. I'm not quite sure how that happened. But nevertheless, the majority of people are in that lower end of the impact scale. We do have a pensioner rebate scheme, and we've got a hardship policy to help people that are in genuine need. But I'd encourage you to fight your way through the spreadsheets to the end and read that capacity to pay report. We're getting there. This is number 22. These are the outcomes if the increase was to go ahead. So the council would become financially sustainable with no ongoing deficits. And again, I'll caveat that with the wise decision-making of future councils. We could continue to deliver current services. So we're not going to put 2 extra graders on. We're not going to build a youth centre. We're not going to do anything we're not trying to do now. We start to address the asset backlog, which is 16 million. Now, we're not going to get rid of that completely. You can't afford to do that. Our depreciation level is over $4.5 million a year, and the rate income's 5.5. So if I put all the money into meeting the depreciation cost, there'd be nothing left. But we need to do something about some of it, because we've got this backlog in asset condition that simply has to be addressed. If you want to know what it looks like if that doesn't occur, cast your mind back to 2016, 17, and think about the pool and the condition that the pool was in. It was on death's door, to put it frankly. Murray Bashir Park, what a disgrace that was in 2017. Everyone should remember the broken paling fence. The kids had fun there every weekend. No facilities. It's now been upgraded. If you don't have the money to invest in those things, that's where you're headed. The assets gradually wear out. The playground equipment in Murray Bashir Park is headed in that direction. It's been in now for 10 years, 12 years. It needs renewing.
Well, that their building that they built down here could have paid for all of that.
Well, no, it couldn't. See, one of the things about grants is that the higher-ups, the Lord Masters, decide what they want to achieve. And the communities have got to try and fit projects into it. And so, no, the money that was obtained under the playground on Murrumbidgee would not have replaced that playground equipment. And in a similar way, we're putting new playground equipment up in North Narrandera at the moment. That's grant funded, not ratepayer funded. We're building footpaths up there as well to link that and the community together.
Is that all fully grant funded?
That's all fully grant funded as well.
No percentage from the council?
No. But some things do require a percentage from the council. Yeah. And I want to be in the position to do that. How many submissions have been made by North Narrandera residents about trying to have something over the rail line? And finally we're getting to a point where we can do it. So some of that asset backlog can be addressed. Not all, but some of it. I talked about the toilet block in the cemetery. That's a simple little example, trivial, but it is a good example. It's fit for purpose. Doesn't get used much. It's old, but it's not going to be replaced. And we've got a whole range of assets like that we don't propose to do anything about because we don't need to. So the road hierarchy, classes 3 through to 8, will stay the same. We don't intend to go out there and bitumen seal all the roads. We're going to do some, but we can't do all. Council's already accepted the tender for the technology, and we got a good price. We did have money in reserve to help pay the capital costs. The way that computer systems work these days is that you've got an annual cost to pay. You never own the stuff. So you have to, fork out $250,000 a year just to keep the thing operating. And it's all in the cloud somewhere. We could meet our compliance upgrades. Now, we have to do that anyway. And we've already established a new Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. We've started work on satisfying the new disclosure requirements. So,
Just a very simple thing. You just stated you accepted the upgrade for computer requirements.
yes,
Did the local computer man submit a tender for it?
no,
Why?
you better ask him.
Well, no, aren't we better off keeping our businesses in our town if we can?
Yes, we are, but what we've found is that there's a lot of things that the local businesses can't tender for. Now, I'll just explain that anything that involves an expenditure of over $250,000, unless it's a special circumstance, but generally speaking, if it's more than 250, we've got to go to public tender. Now, we use a mechanism to do that, and what we do is encourage over time all the contractors who might be able to provide services to the council to register. They register on a system called Vendor Panel, and so all the builders in the Riverina are on the vendor panel, all the computer companies in the country are on it, thousands of providers. And what happens when a council decides they want to call a tender, vendor panel notify all of the contractors that are registered with them that this tender is out there, have a look at it, submit a tender if you can. Now, we did that with the computers. I think we got 6 tenders, 4 from reputable companies and 2 which were, I won't use the right word, but not satisfactory in terms of the tender process. We whittled that down by looking closely at the 4 that were. We invited them to come and make submissions, presentations to the staff, and ultimately we settled on one of those, and it was actually the most cost effective. Computer systems in local government tend to sort themselves out on the size of the council. The very big ones, they're very expensive, not only in terms of initial outlay, but they're very expensive in staff time. They require a lot of resources to manage them, so you've got to be very careful. So that's what happened with the computer system. The company that we've accepted the tender with is actually called Magic. It's a company that started in New Zealand. They're now in many states of Australia, including a number of councils in New South Wales. And so we're pretty confident that we've got a product that will be able to meet our needs for the near future. Hopefully the same as practical, and we'll get 20 years out of it. Similarly with the Destination and Discovery Hub, we went to public tender on that. There were no local tenders. We got a tender from Burton's in Wagga and we accepted that. And that often happens. We've been very, very fortunate with some smaller tenders in recent times, like the foot paving up in North Narrandera, where we've got a local company doing that work and doing a tremendous job, extremely cost effective. So it's horses for courses, but I can't make people tender. If they see the opportunity, they will, and they'll be treated fairly if they do. As I've said probably enough times, we'd like to be able to match the grants for infrastructure renewal, including the storm water, and have an opportunity to capitalise on other opportunities as they might come along. A council with capacity. Now, you rightly asked, what's the likely scenario if the increase doesn't go ahead? And in that horrible document that was referred to earlier, there's some spreadsheets that show exactly what will happen financially if the current expenditure regime is maintained and the current income scenario is also maintained. So, it's my view that council will not be able to continue to operate as it currently is. If we can't increase the income, we will have to decrease the expenditure. The only way you can do that is in services, and what that means is less people. So we would continue with our review of service levels. So the road system, the parks and gardens, the street cleaning, the provision of other services inside the building, the library, visitor centre, all of those things would be under review to see whether or not they could be operated more efficiently, and that's nothing different to what council did in past years when we started with this improvement plan. They went across many of the service areas, tried to cut back. But you can't cut back and save the sort of money we're talking about without losing a significant number of people. The fees and charges increase. Well, they could be, but fees and charges really, and I'm not talking about water or sewer or waste here, I'm talking about how much you pay to go in the pool or the gymnasium or to use the art centre or one of our public halls, that type of fee. The income the council gets from that at the moment is very minor. The fees are modest to start with, and there's a constant stream of requests to waive the fees. And wherever we can, we do. We try to facilitate use of those things because that's what they're there for. And that's what the community wants. But if there's no money in the kitty, then some of that stuff would have to be turned away. The Narrandera stormwater upgrade would go back to well, pretty much where it is. It wouldn't happen unless there was 100% grant. Now that could happen, that could occur. I'm not going to say it won't. In my opinion, it's unlikely. Opportunities that I've talked about would be lost, and asset renewal would depend entirely on grants. I don't know how many applications for grant money I put into the pool before we got one.
May I just ask, sorry,
Of course, but if you do use the microphone, you'll be on the airwaves.
So when you say if you got a grant for the stormwater system,
Yes.
would the percentage of grant that you have to pay back depend on how the council is running? You know, like if you're on the borderline of not running at all or whatever, would the grant amount be increased from where it comes from?
Yes, look, that's not as unusual as it might sound. A lot of grant programs will be set up like most councils will have to pay 30%.
Yeah.
But if you're in a financial position or your community's in a financial position where you can substantiate poor or low socioeconomic status, they might say you've only got to pay 20%.
So realistically, the figures that we've got for all those things could be a lot lower, like say if they gave you a full grant or gave you a grant that covered 80 or 90% of the stormwater, then that's one less thing you have to worry about.
I'm not confident enough to agree with you. I don't think that's likely. And Morell and Sewer is a good example. We got a grant up there for what we thought was going to be 75% of the project. By the time we got through jumping through all the hoops and started work, that percentage has dropped down to about 60, and the government have simply said, we've got no money for you. So I think the scenario that you're painting is unlikely. As I said, the Narrandera stormwater would be reliant upon grants, and that's fine, because there might be another flood for 50 years. But we had 2 in a month in 22. And I just don't like thinking about some of those outcomes. Opportunities might be lost. We'd have less staff numbers, and a good number of our staff are ratepayers in this council, and there'd be obviously no possibility of any increase in salaries. So that's a real scenario. In addition to coming along tonight and expressing a view, you have an opportunity to put in a written submission. There are two ways you can do, well, there's any number of ways you can do that. Most people are filling out the form that was provided in the letter that was sent to you, but some people are just sending me an email. Some people are going on the website and simply typing in a submission on the Have Your Say. Please take that opportunity. I'm not recording anything on Facebook. None of that will find its way into my report to the council meeting, other than the fact that council has advertised on its Facebook page all of these meetings and the opportunities that have been provided. So you need to make a submission and express your view. I've asked at all the other meetings, and no one's taken me up on this, by the way, I have asked at all the other meetings that if your submission is against the proposal, please don't just say no. Make some suggestions about how you think this problem that we've got could be addressed. So is there a service? Now, we've had people expressing views about the tourism infrastructure. That's something that is a valid opportunity to reduce costs. So put some positive into your submission as well. If you've lost the letter and you don't know how much the increase is likely to be, you can, again, on our website, we've got a calculator. All you've got to do is type in your assessment number and it'll give you an idea of the likely outcomes. We've had a fairly extensive community engagement program. I think this is number 6 public conversation that I've had. I've also had one with the staff. I've had quite a number of one-on-one meetings. I had a 50-minute telephone conversation with an owner of several properties who lives on the coast the other day. So there's there has been plenty of opportunity to talk. Even after tonight, if you have further questions, make contact. I'll try and help you understand. This is the last of the public meetings, and the submissions will go to the council meeting, and I think it's the 21st of November, at which they will be making a decision, and we'll let you know as soon after that as possible what the decision of council is. Now, remembering at this stage that that decision is only to lodge an application with IPART or not, and what that application might look like. We've got until the first week of February to prepare and lodge the application. If council's decision is to proceed, IPART will take a couple of months to consider it, during which time they will call for further submissions from this community on whatever that proposal is. They'll make a determination either late April, early May, and then it'll come back to council. Council will develop a draft budget for 24-25 based on that, and that will be publicly exhibited as well.
Hi, thank you for holding this additional evening for us. For the work during the day, I really appreciate that. On your point just now, have you considered the possibility that IPART might reject if we do go down that path? Have you got plan B ready to roll out?
If the application is ultimately unsuccessful, then you're looking at the slide I showed you in terms of the negative outcomes. So that will be plan B.
And in relation to Plan B for stormwater, therefore, have you considered other options in terms of water security across the Shire? Given that we're in El Nino and probably, as you pointed out, may not have another flood event for 50 odd years, could you push that aside and start looking at water storage and water recycling, and therefore also including our drinking water, which is unbelievably bad? Had I known that the drinking water was such an issue when I was looking at moving here, I possibly would have reconsidered, because I'm spending $100 a day on bottled water. So that's an additional cost for me in order to manage my health. I just think we need to think outside of the box, given our climate. Water security is a huge issue. We should be protecting our water, we should be managing it far better than we are. And I'd like to see more water tanks spring up around town. I'd like to see council introduce some sort of a initiative where they help individual residents put 10,000 litre water tanks on our own properties so that we can defend ourselves in times of fire. But I really think that if we've got the opportunity to relook the stormwater, I think we should be looking at ways of recycling, managing, storing, and we've got a water tank at the top of the hill, which is where I believe you said the floodwaters came from last year. Could you not put a massive water drain there and just siphon it off to the water tank at the top of the hill?
As I said earlier on, I'm not a hydrologist, so I don't.
But digging up residential streets and the like just seems counterintuitive to me.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure that every resident here would be environmentally sensitive and conscious of trying to do something along those lines. Having stood in East Street in the water and watch it come down Charles and East Street, I wouldn't be confident that you could catch it in that way, but you might be able to make a difference.
But thank you again for this evening, much appreciated.
That's a pleasure. So,
just quickly, no, you're not a hydrologist, you're the general manager of business of our council. So I'd just like to take the point that the lady brought up that I think was quite genuine, is if you go back to that slide again, please, the one you had previously. Yes, correct, they are outcomes. That is not a contingency plan if this failed. So what I'd like to know is, do you have a contingency plan? How have you developed it? If not one, if the iPark goes down, whether we vote it up or don't, your $120,000, potentially $200,000 exercise goes down. As a general manager of business, what is your contingency plan to protect us from those outcomes, or at least minimise them?
I haven't got a document that says Plan B.
Why not?
I do have a document here. I know what has to be done if this fails, and I've described it there for you.
They're outcomes. They're not mitigations of outcomes. So you've got those there, and they're worst case scenarios, and that's the way you develop a plan to get people on side, or governments on side, or state governments on side, or departments to be able to push your case. We all know that. That's how business works. So let's start getting to the bottom of it on how you're going to develop a contingency plan to be able to tell us how we can go through, what the priorities are, how they go about it.
Thank you. Again, perhaps you could include that in your submission.
It's your job.
I can't write submissions. I'm not allowed
It's not a submission, it's a contingency plan on our behalf as ratepayers.
To protect us, as you say, you're protecting your staff and councillors, we'd like you to protect us as well.
Well, I'll make it as plain as I can. I will not be able to protect you or the council at its current operating level.
We get that.
Okay, so
Contingency plan.
if there has to be changes, and I'll come to you in a moment, if there has to be changes, that will be driven by the councillors who make the decision or who have to respond to IPART when they make the decision, because there's no easy out.
We know that, that's why we want a contingency plan.
even if I limit the hours on a lot of our facilities, double the entrance fee. Talk one a session about the pool. It's $4 to get in, and everyone hates it. I could make it $8, and it would only generate an additional $120,000 a year. So that's a long way short of 2.3 million. Anyway, please make a submission along those lines. Council might instruct me to prepare one, and if they do, I will. So,
Sean Lane, Elwood Street. I've only got a couple of things to say, just my take on the show tonight. You've been pushing in a lot of things, hell of a big wish list. I'm less than confident, even if this rate went ahead, I don't think you can handle it. I really don't think you're viable. It's not enough. And you're asking for the top dollar now. You keep pushing your $16 million stormwater drain.
Yeah.
Now, to me, the biggest one out of that was, it's an act of God. How big of a stormwater drain do you want? You can have all the entrances you like into the river. If you've got a high river at the same time, it's useless to you. Opening your outlets, I don't know whether you've done that or on the existing drain, but there's been times that they were going to put in lift pumps to assist when you've got a outward flow coming in. But, and you're hell-bent, like, Red Hill's got to go ahead. But all the water's coming this way. Have you envisaged any other way? Coolakapama, or is it higher than Narrandera? Or, look, these are things that I've just thought about. I'm wondering, can you tell me, have you thought of better options or other options? $16 million, mate, that's just one of your wish lists.
yeah, that's true. It's a big
Thank you,
project.
Mr. Tom. I'd like to thank the ladies that spoke, the other gentlemen that spoke. Thank you. You've done a nice job tonight. You haven't got me yet, but you did.
No, that's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's just have a second, just in response to that. About this time last year, we did do a study on residential land and employment lands, and we have a couple of sites identified, but one is on the western side of the current industrial estate. I would be surprised if that didn't drain in this direction, but it might not. 50-50, I'm told. And the other one is further up on the eastern side of the tip where council owns land as well. And that's going to be the same sort of problem. But as I said, that they do provide a lot of water, and that water came following the floods in the main street, but the real impact of the main street happens almost instantly from water that fell just here.
George, just getting back to your comment about the budget for next year, you said that you've more or less presumed that the special rate variation is going to go in. Is that correct?
No, that's not
And the
correct.
gentleman was correct about potential contingency plans. Well, what is the budget? Have you calculated either the 41.5% and the 48%? And have the councillors been involved in that process? Has the mayor been involved in that process?
Mr Hall, if you look at that long-term financial plan document that your friend described as difficult, there is a long-term budget for each of these scenarios, yes, including the base case, and at the bottom of it, there's a lot of red numbers.
Yeah,
and
so
the councillors...
Sorry, at the meeting on the 21st of November, the councillors will discuss each of those scenarios with no rate change, no special rate variation coming through?
They'll be presented with all of those options. They've got to adopt the long-term financial plan.
Yes, so we've got the three options for the mayor and the councillors to consider at the November.
That's
Thank
correct.
You. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. A couple of times tonight you brought up the pool, and it doesn't sit well with me because I am an avid pool goer. I go to the pool at least once a day now, and in the middle of the hot of summer I go twice a day. I buy a season pass.
That's fantastic.
Now, a season pass for a single is $114. When I divide that by 4, that's a month worth of visits. So you can increase the pool fees for the season passes, I believe.
Yeah.
You don't have to increase $4 a day for the one visit, because there's a lot of people that do visit our town, pay the $4, come for the day and have a great day. But there are a lot of people that do the season passes, and I buy the season pass because it's cheaper. It's less than 50 cents a visit. But that, I can tell you what member number I am. I'm member number $3,748.
I think that's fantastic. I'd like all the locals, the residents to use that facility.
That's over $500,000 just on single passes.
Unfortunately, they keep telling me that they don't. I know the swim club do, and they're booked out. So there's some locals that are using it. So
Sorry, George, I'm in competition with John for getting up here.
you're still one behind.
Am I asked to get come on? I don't believe you answered my last question about being confident that you strategically looked inside it, the best way to be able to be saving money in previous years. But moving forward, I'm a little bit disturbed, if I understand your answer correctly to Baz's question, that you have no contingency plan. You said if the council's asked you, you'll do one.
What I said was I don't have a document that's headed up contingency plan.
If the council's asked you to do one. If I'm on the council and I get that report next month, and I'm presented with 2 picks and asked to choose my shovel, it's very difficult to give you an accurate response. So you're giving them a report that says, if you do nothing, these are the outcomes. They're not the contingency, as correctly pointed out, these are the outcomes. So the council go, well, my first question is, you are now assuming that they're all going to vote, all 9 of them are going to just understand this.
No. I'd invite you to wait and read my report.
Well, I would hope that the council would read your report.
Oh, they will.
The first thing I would be saying is Mr. Cowan, we also would like you, for shits and giggles, to give us a contingency plan. If this all goes to custody, the community says, we don't want this, you read all our proposals, we very vehemently say, even though it won't equate to 2% of the population that's attending these meetings, the rest go, oh, well, they're going to do it anyway. Give us a report that says, all right, this fails, we can't submit this to IPART. And even if we do, IPART get strong community submissions that reject it, and maybe give you a percentile.
Yes.
Why don't we do it?
Whether they can. I think it's either in or out.
Well, don't think, you should know. That should be number one, I'd be thinking. And instead of going as somebody else suggested for near 50%, why not put it down? If you're not going to make your 60% target in 10 years, which is correctly said, you're going to be mid to high 50.
And I probably should have said 60, but it's actually 59.
It's pie in the sky, you're not going to be in 10 years.
No, I'm not.
No, these councillors aren't going to be, some of these people won't be either, but, so it's just speculative figures. But I would have thought, if you're going to do that, and if your target is to get to 60%, give us a rate variation that will get us there right here and now, which gives future councils something to work with. If you can't make that, then drop it down to a percentile which makes things manageable.
So are you supporting a greater increase? Is that what you're saying?
If it's higher, yes, 100%. If you're saying, give us a special rate variation so that, I don't know, we get another thing to play with, and all the community agrees with it, then yes. But I don't think anybody here has got a real problem with the special rate variations, providing that you have done your homework, that you can't save any more money internally, you haven't been mismanaging funds, your financial director knows what he's doing. All these things that, as new members of the public, we don't see and we don't know. Yes, we could go to the website and sit there for hours and hours and hours and reading the reports, but essentially, these are the councillors that we voted in, who are supposed to be asking you, who's been employed by them, these hard questions. And as the question asked before, are you confident that all of this background work has been done before we've got to this point? That you have not too many staff, that you haven't wasted money here, you haven't wasted money there, there's additional savings. Have you looked internally as hard as you can before you put your hand out and said, we need more money? That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
Can I just carry on from there?
Yeah, yes, you can, but I'll just alert people to the fact that the slideshow's about to close down because my computer's not plugged into power.
Can you let George answer my question first? Sorry? Can you let him answer my question?
Yeah, and it was a multifaceted question, and I'll try and do my best with it. I've got no doubt that you could find examples of where things could have been done slightly better, slightly differently, less cost might have been involved. I've got no doubt that that happens. Your council, it's a small council in terms of comparisons to other areas, but it's a big organisation and there's lots of things happening that I don't see personally every day or even every week. And I can say that there have been a couple of decisions made by the council that I would have done differently. But that's the beauty of local government. There's 9 people looking at an issue, and those 9 people are responsible to the community. So their thinking and their approach to issues is often different to mine because of that. I've got some confidence in the work that's been done to get to this point. I think that it's been very thorough. We started by examining our asset management systems and we've put a lot of work into that. We've had a lot of analysis on the financial models and I believe that they're sound, but all of that is subject to the future. I said to someone this morning that my crystal ball's got a crack in it, and all I can do is go by the policies of the government that I see today and I see emerging. I believe those policies would suggest that achieving government grants for capital works into the future is going to be more difficult. We can rely on the operational grants because they're very well embedded, and the council is going to find itself where the sorts of projects we've had in the past are going to be more difficult to finance. But all of that is subject to councillor involvement and oversight. Councillors are not trained accountants. They come to me with varying backgrounds and different experiences and understandings. But in my opinion, they're all honest and hardworking and trying to do the very best for the community. And I think that that's the aspect of councillors that you, as a community, should have some confidence in.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a number of issues being raised and it appears there's a lot of headbutting going on which will probably ultimately get us nowhere. It could go on and on and on with no benefit to anyone. There's one standout in all this. If council don't listen to the ratepayers and a substantial rate rise does occur, the crime rate in this town is destined to go through the roof. Isn't it bad enough now? Because that's what happens when people are broke. The council have made it clear that what it wants, but they're answerable to the councillors, led by Mayor Neville through the GM. Now history tells us the councillors, led by Mayor Neville, are not listening to the ratepayers who elected them. The Skywalk issue was ignored in the absence of a number of them from the community meetings about this proposed race is another example. All these grants that ratepayers have to contribute to is for the visitors. They're the ones that get the benefit. We just pay. For the cost of how much the Skywalk cost, how much will it bring into the town in the next 20 years? Nothing relevant. I think it's time for positive action. It's time that positive action was initiated and someone starts thinking outside the square. I'd like to move a motion of no confidence in the Mayor to start the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now, as I said, my computer's just about to die, so what I'd like to do is, there you go. Sorry, who was it? Moses? No. One of those guys, a long time ago. What I'd like to do, and I'm sorry, Madam, but I'd like to invite anyone that has not been to the microphone and would like to ask a question or make a statement or express a view to take the opportunity now before we run out of time.
Yeah, you can have my say.
Thank you. Am I allowed to have her say?
Yes.
Just a question, with regard to COVID, is that still going? Is that still going? No, it's off. I'll just yell. With regard to COVID and all the COVID lockdowns and stuff that we had during that 2 years or bit over of COVID happening, this is because I don't know the answer to this and I'd like you to tell me, did the council receive any funding regarding COVID support for wages? Or the JobKeeper and all that stuff? Did they receive wage supplements to pay your wages bill during the COVID period?
I don't believe that our council qualified for any of those payments.
Do you? That's a big question. As a previous business owner, we did receive COVID wage support for our employees. Did Narrandera Council employees receive COVID support from the business that employed them?
No, I don't think so. What we were able to do...
So how did you pay their wages?
As per normal, they remained employees and an obligation...
Yes, of course, so did ours, but the government put in that program of JobKeeper. Did Narrandera Council qualify for JobKeeper?
That's what I'm saying. I don't believe we did. Now, I'll give you an example. We had to close the Visitor Information Centre. We relocated a couple of those staff. They actually went out to the tip, to man the tip during that emergency period. We were able to cope with most people by allowing them to either work from home if they were office staff, or we had special arrangements for the outdoor teams. So we weren't generally eligible for any of that money.
So Narrandera Council in its entirety received no wage support from the programs during the whole COVID period?
Yeah, I think, I'm pretty confident that's right.
How can I find out?
Well,
because that could be huge numbers.
It's not huge numbers.
Yeah, but it could be. I know it was for our business.
And
it saved us.
It's history. Well, I know that, and it was designed to save business.
But it did save us. I'm wondering if you're not sure.
Should be on top of that, General Manager.
Is that right?
Yes, of course.
Is that right that you're not sure? Does anyone know?
No, most of them were based
No. We'll leave it at that, because my question is, did you receive wage support for your employees during COVID? That was my question, and you're not sure.
And what I'm saying is, if you allow me to say, most of the subsidies were based around loss of income. So businesses that incurred a loss of income over the previous period were able to lodge a submission and get support on that basis. Council was not in that position. The only business that we were involved in that was eligible was the caravan park, as the caravan park was closed for a period of time, and they received some support, but they also received support from the council in terms of reduced lease payments. So what actually happened during COVID was that it cost the council money. It wasn't a source of income. We lost all the income from the airport for the period while it was closed.
I was actually just referring to your employees. Were they still paid full wages from council when they weren't allowed to work? Yes? So that's what happened?
Yes, they were.
Oh, yes, the gentleman said yes, because you said you weren't sure.
No, I said I wasn't sure whether we received any subsidy from the government. That was your question.
Yeah, that's right, and you weren't sure whether you did, so that means you would have had to have paid in full, because you didn't know. You didn't know my answer, that's all. You didn't know, you couldn't answer my question.
Okay, I think I've answered your question pretty thoroughly.
Can I have a question?
Yes, of course.
And
Are we still live streaming?
We are
Yes.
live streaming, yes.
So
We are.
We are live streaming, so can you use the mic, please, if it's working? Because otherwise the people on the other end can't hear what you're saying.
Okay, George, my question to you is,
It's not working.
I'm Kathy Manley.
Yeah, that's
and
better.
my question to you is, and I guess it's coming from a social point of view.
Yeah.
I am quite concerned if the variation goes ahead, how many people in town will honestly be able to pay rates? And I know that you've got this contingency, but if we go into a drought, how many farmers are really going to be able to pay their rates?
They're good questions.
Because that will have a big bearing on the budget too.
Yes, and I'm sure it will have a big bearing on those businesses, those farm businesses, there's no doubt about that.
And if it goes for 10 years, it'll be a long time.
I'd rather hope we don't have a drought for 10 years.
But that's how they do.
I know that I was in another place during that drought and it wasn't very pretty. And strangely enough, we had 2 very severe floods during the drought. All right, anyone else that hasn't had a go? All right, thank you very much. I'll hand over to the Mayor just to say good night.
Yes, thanks George, and thanks again for turning out, because we've had some suggestions. It's not an easy thing, you know. I asked the same question as yourselves when I first knew about this, why we're doing it now. We could have left this for another year, it would have been very easy. We would have battled on, but we've taken a decision, and hopefully it is the right decision so that the next council will be in good stead to carry on. So, as George said, get those submissions in. Thank you again, and safe drive. Thank you.